Hey, welcome in. I'm Rita, and this is The Story I'm Telling Myself, a podcast about uncovering the beliefs that hold us back and rewriting them with truth, courage, and clarity. If you've ever felt like you're standing in your own way, you are not alone. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. It is almost the end of the week, and it's like a holiday weekend coming up here in the US. So, if you've been waiting for us to go live, thank you for hanging out. We're a few minutes late, but we're so glad that you are with us. Say hello in the comments and welcome our guest, Dr. Nikki Lanier, one of my most cherished friends. Nikki, please tell everybody who you are.
Hi, Rita. Thank you so much for this opportunity and for a chance to talk to your beloved community. My name is Nikki Lanier, and I'm the CEO of Harper Slade. We are an advisory firm that's focused on helping organizations create multicultural environments that are thriving and rich and potent. We see that as risk mitigation work, but also positions you well for the future of work. I'm also the founder of an organization called RARE, and RARE is a community of women who are really assented to, interested in, curious about how to advance racial equity in their communities. It is a community of white women who are really interested in learning these principles around advocacy with other white people in their circles. And so we've got about 3,000 women in that community from all over the world, and we're really excited about that work as well.
Nikki is somebody you've got to connect with. If you're not following her on LinkedIn or Instagram, hey Ruth, so glad that you are with us. You need to make sure that you do this because she is a true thought leader and she is a world changer. She's on a mission. She's very clear about it, and she is teaching all of us and helping us find our own sea legs as we navigate the changing demographic that is happening inside of the US. But as you mentioned, Nikki, it is not just a US purpose and mission. It is much bigger than that. HarperSlade.com. I've got it up on the screen for you. HarperSlade.com is Nikki's company, and you're everything you need to know. All her socials, all of her contact information, everything you need will be available to you at HarperSlade.com. So please go connect with Nikki. As a Black woman and as a mom, Nikki is coming to share a personal story with us today that I think is pretty important and pretty powerful. And so I'm not going to say anything more about it, but that little intro there. And so happy to have you with us, Ruth. So Nikki, set us up, give us some context here and talk about this moment of recognizing fear and asking yourself, should I listen to my fear?
Well, fear is a real emotion for me. It's a forward presenting emotion for me, if I'm honest, and it's one that I will likely forever have to manage for the rest of my life. Many of us, if we spend time kind of thinking about or unpacking what emotion seems to be the most available for us, like for some it might be anger, for some it might be sadness, for some it might be other things. For me, it's fear, and I suspect that that's true with anyone who's living inside of a society that continues to send messages of their unimportance. And I think that's kind of the life of the lived navigation, certainly of Black Americans, arguably Black people across the world. And so I think, there's a piece of that I've had to reckon with my entire life, sort of quietly. But there's a couple of moments where fear metastasized, and specifically in the context of my motherhood. So let me talk about that one first. I'm a mother of two children, and my oldest son, his name is Justin, and he's now 29. And what most Black folks know, Black parents know, is that there comes a time in your child's life, particularly if you have a male child, where you have to prepare them for the realities of how the world will experience them. That there is a narrative that is assigned to them at birth, that society gives them, that has usually absolutely nothing to do with who they are at their marrow, who they are at their core, and their worth. And yet this narrative will follow us around for the rest of our lives. And it will be largely what people might be reacting to before they get to know the you of you. And so that's true of the messages that my ex-husband now And my son's dad and I shared with him as he was growing up. So by the time he was 16, Justin was just an incredible student and just really high achieving. And so we bought him a car, and that was great. He was driving and had his driver's license. And for Black parents, that presents a particular opportunity for the kind of unique and nuanced fear that we all have. How that shows up when your child starts driving, particularly if they are, driving what some might consider a nice car, in largely white areas or in white neighborhoods, or really just on highways and freeways. And so we spent a lot of time as a family unpacking something very basic, like, what is it going to mean when Justin starts driving? What does it mean when he has his own car? And what kind of car could we select for him that would perhaps stave off or blunt some of the realities and the inevitabilities that we think he might encounter with regard to the way policing shows up for us in the Black community. So let me just pause there and see if there's some other questions that you want to ask in terms of how to direct the talk.
Yeah, first of all, Ruth is supporting, saying, yep, this is something that if you live in the Black and brown community, you know about this. And it is something that nobody ever talked about until maybe I was in my 30s.
Yep.
I was probably in my 30s before this became a conversation that moved from just the Black and brown community to something that was being shared in the media and other places. I think social media helps to allow for that to happen. But, this podcast, The Story I'm Telling Myself, is all about uncovering our internal narratives. And what's so interesting about what you just said, Nikki, is sometimes the most dangerous narratives aren't the unreliable narratives in our own heads. They are the unreliable narratives assigned to us when we are in a classification or a labeled group of people that is othered.
Yeah.
In a society.
Yep.
And, I remember as a teenager, I remember that being true for gay children. I remember the stories that came out of young gay people being beat to death outside of bars and on the side of the road, right? So, kinds of things. So there's all kinds of othering that gets you to this place where this narrative is put upon you that you are less than human in some way.
Yeah.
Or unworthy of basic human consideration.
Without a doubt.
That is highly destructive. And so there is, in the work that you're doing in racial equity, and especially in the RARE collective, part of that is helping people recognize that they've ingested that narrative subconsciously, right?
Yeah.
And that they are then propagating that or overlaying that into situations that just continue to propagate the narrative. So it's very deep work about the story we tell ourselves, because it is happening at such a subconscious level for white people in this particular instance.
Yeah. And I will tell you, the tension point is, while it is true, there is a narrative. I mean, there's a societal narrative that's assigned to each of us, not just people who like all of us, on race and gender lines specifically, that just come to us in utero. They're as soon as we're shot out of the womb. That's such a graphic way to talk about it. As soon as we're born, the narrative comes on, right? And we think that, there's a way to kind of academically and professionally exempt ourselves from it. So if I, as the parent of a child, can garner enough degrees and, accomplish enough professional feats and, cement myself as a leader in community with name recognition, brand recognition that's fairly favorable, then perhaps that this assigned narrative of my diminishment and my not being intellectual and my not being as human as white can somehow be blunted. Now, what's interesting also, Rita, is that as I talked about that when my son was growing up with some of my white friends or neighbors, what many white people heard was exactly what kind of you're talking about with these stories that you're lifting with this theme, and that is, are you promulgating unnecessary fear with your children, Nikki? Like you're teaching them to fear white people. You're teaching them to fear policing, and
Oh, that is so
uh,
interesting. I will tell you one of the most revelatory moments in my adult life was you and your family had moved to Florida, and you and I were communicating, and you were down in Florida, and the and Trayvon Martin, the killing of Trayvon Martin had just happened, and you said, as a black mom, I just I don't know what to do with that,
mhm,
and I thought that was the first time as a white woman it really hit me like, oh my God. Because at that point I was a mom, and to think I will never have that fear, I will never have that challenge, and how much to carry,
yeah,
because
yeah,
nobody wants to live in fear.
right.
Nobody would choose to do that. And
Nobody
yet
would.
it's a reality. And I never it took having it be such a personal moment in just a conversation that was probably a normal conversation for you, but was just like bullseye for me, right? To really understand what is happening in the black community to a level that I just couldn't take it in the news, and it didn't hit the same way.
Yep, yep.
It
Yeah,
was
I
the
mean,
mother to mother connection that
yeah,
really solidified it.
that's it. And just walking around understanding, I mean, most Black Americans at least understand at our core, my Blackness could and has ended opportunities for me. It's ended jobs for me. It's closed doors for me. It's shut down health um, opportunities to explore a healthier lifestyle for me. The way that I can engage with it's just shut down a lot, and it can also end my life. And that's true. That's a reality that we all understand. It's also true specifically for Black men, for Black boys. And so what I knew when my son was born, when they said this is a boy, the rush of excitement and happiness and thrill, and then it was also, he's a Black boy and he's born in the US, and that could be enough for
You
his
have
life.
to prepare yourself for heartbreak from the get
From the
go,
get, and
right?
so people hear that as being so, exaggerating and just unnecessarily emotional, but it is a reality, and there's too many examples of where it's just Blackness alone, and the narrative
Yes.
that comes with that is instinctively responded to as something that needs to be stifled, or muted, or ended, and there's just no way around it. So that's kind of how we have to manage parenting, is informed through that lens. Not that lens only, but certainly partially.
Well, and certainly we're seeing with our nation's decision to use ICE in the way that they are using them
Yep.
today, the snatch and grabbing people off the streets and coming into people's homes and things. Again, it's targeting a particular non-white person in the world, just simply based on their outward presentation of who they are,
Yeah.
and it's very frightening.
Yeah.
It's and so this question of should I listen to my fear? Unfortunately, I feel like we are in a place in our nation where the people that are walking around really feeling that fear in a palpable way has dramatically escalated.
Mhm. 100%. Because, we've always had this sentiment, right? We've got laws and we've got we've had laws and rules and policies purporting to pull us out of the default sentiment. And I would argue, Rita, that the default sentiment has always presumed the dehumanization of the darker citizen,
Yes.
of the darker human on some level, like to various degrees. But there's just never this presumption of equality or parity with regard to humanity. There's some folks that are presumed to matter, and some of us have to contextualize our way into it if we do. And even then, we're there for a moment and then back down to not mattering so much. And then it's just
Wow.
episodic, right? And so that's the narrative that we're swimming in. That's the undercurrent of the lived experience in our world and certainly in our country. Uh, and to the extent that we propped up laws and policies to try to bat that sentiment away, things like Title VII and civil rights policy and voter rights policy, and all the things that we've said that you have to treat Black and brown people like everybody else. Those laws sit on top of a belief system. And so now we're in an era where the laws are falling away or erecting consistent with that belief system. But the belief system
or they're being ignored. I mean, they're definitely being challenged by the belief system at a new level again, right?
Without a doubt, because the sentiment is now burgeoning, right? It's back. It contracts and then it, whatever the word is, swells and then contracts. So this sentiment of we don't necessarily believe that Black and brown people are as human as white, and even if you are, I get to decide when and where that's invoked. That's what the privilege, if you will, of whiteness is not having to swim in this space where they're not quite sure in what spaces their presumptive humanity is in what spaces it's not. And that there are certain instances that tend to suggest that the existence of Black people as fully human and policing as an example, they just don't. Those puzzle pieces are very difficult to push together, and so we have to let fear inform us. I guess in that instance, I would call it more prudence and the reality of the navigated lived experience. It does definitely birth fear, and from that fear, we react.
And I want to get into that. I know we have limited time with you. I want to make sure that we give you a chance to really talk us through some strategies. Like, how do we begin to walk that tightrope? Because it is a tightrope that you're walking between not letting the fear overpower you, but also welcoming the wisdom.
Yep.
That is presented in that. But before we get there, I just want to, one thing that you're talking about, the dehumanization. And I just have to say this, because it's, you and I spent time together in human resources, and in human resources, one of the most powerful ways that I found to really help people check themselves, because people can get really angry, get really bent out of shape in work and business, sort of start to show behavior that is bullying, that is not helpful, that kind of thing. And one of the most powerful questions I would ask people is, if that person that they're targeted, that their anger is targeted at, if that person was your mother, your sister, your daughter, your son, one of your immediate family members in this situation, how would you want the person in your role to treat them?
That's so good.
Right? So good. And it causes you to stop and think. It causes you to stop and humanize somebody. That's right? Exactly. Now you're putting humanization to that. And we are at risk right now of a strong narrative in our nation that is subjugating the humanization of entire blocks of population.
Without a doubt.
And we should have some fear about that. So help us, Nikki. Give us some guidance. What can you share with us based on your lived experience of doing this? This is your daily life. Even today, your young son, who managed to drive a car and not get shot or arrested or right? He is still now in some ways a more dangerous Black man.
Yep.
Right? So it doesn't go away for you. You're still walking this tightrope. So help us, those of us that live in privilege like me. How do we walk that tightrope where we recognize the story of fear and we use it in a way that helps us navigate effectively versus keeping us in a puddle on the floor, feeling hopeless about our situation?
Okay. I guess I'd say core to my reactions and responses to like my son driving and all the things that I put together to try to help him manage police stops and navigating in engagements with police, like all the training that we put him through and all of the assets that we put in his car to help him manage that.
Well, yeah, you were telling me that, like, you actually like tried to humanize him. You had
Yeah.
specific documents and stuff that you created to really try to
Mhm.
help a police officer see him as a person and not just a Black youth.
Yeah, yeah. So I've developed a police pouch that I had, and he wore it around his neck, like almost like a conference lanyard. And inside of that was the, registration, license, copy, and insurance, but also a photo of his family, a family photo, because I wanted the police officer to see immediately that this kid has a family, has a family, and is a part of a unit, is a part of a community that loves him. And then I also had like a little narrative card, and I just typed up, my name is Justin, and I'm a college student traveling from home to my college in Georgia. I am a straight A student. My parents are gainfully employed. I've never been in trouble with the law. I don't have any drugs or any paraphernalia of any sort in my car. And so it was just designed to, if he's encountering a police officer that has presumptively assigned a narrative to him, I want that narrative to be disrupted very quickly. And so the police pouch was designed to just like, the officer would just take the whole pouch. You just take it hung around his neck, just take the pouch, because obviously you don't want him to reach for anything or him to make any movements once the police officers are approaching the car. So anyway, so that was that tool that we use for that. And we still have that available, Rita. So I don't know if any of your listeners are interested in that. We're working with an organization called Black Yarn out of Lexington for distributing those pouches far and wide. And really they're ideal for mothers whose children are moving into adolescence and growing up and starting to learn how to drive and ultimately be getting their license and basically just navigating driving on their own, and to help them deal with the inevitability of police stops. Beyond that, though, to answer your question, I think what I had to get to, and this is as much about my role as a mom as it is my role as a leader who is advancing racial equity and working with a lot of white people and white women specifically in order to do it. I know for me, there is no way I can be effectual and thoughtful and authentic in this work if I led with fear of white people, right? I've always had a fear of white people. I still do and will probably forever. I just fear whiteness. I fear what it has meant to my family. I fear the experiences that I've had in the past and all the experiences that I've heard from many of my family members, and when they have engaged with whiteness, particularly my parents, as you know, their story around their civil rights work and how violent it has been for Blackness to collide with whiteness. Um, and so I've just kind of always been left with the fear of white people somewhere in the back of my mind that I've had to reconcile. But I've had to now push that forward and really talk openly about it. That would say step one is just acknowledging and discussing, like talking and sharing with white people. So, like, if you're scared of whatever, acknowledging that and then trying to find ways to be around that and talk about that fear with that community, I think is really important. I have found it to be extraordinarily disarming for people to talk about. When I talk about my fears that I grew up with and still managing around white people, the reaction I get from a lot of white people is like, oh my gosh, no, you shouldn't fear like that. But it invites a conversation. And it's very shocking to a lot of people to know that even me, like with all the stuff that I've done, all the stuff that I have and my career, that is still, it's, yeah, I mean, it's in there because it's in there, right? And so it's not something that I shy away from anymore, number one. Number two, inviting new lived experiences to help disrupt the fear. So fear is based on a narrative, right? It's based on my narrative. Now, while I can say on one hand, I think my narrative is valid and I've got receipts and I've got proof of where it's my fear and narrative is never the entire narrative. It may be a compelling one, but it's not the whole story of all of my experiences with
Right.
whiteness
Yes.
and
Yes.
people, right? And so just reminding myself that there's also a yeah, but to it. And if I don't have enough examples of yeah, buts, then I need to go seek them out. One example, Rita, I don't know if you
Okay.
remember.
Okay. Wait. Don't just breeze past that. You don't
Okay.
have enough examples of yeah, but it's
Go
your
get them.
job to seek them out.
Go get you a yeah, but. That's exactly
Yes.
right. That's exactly right. And so one such example was I had never spent any time, like intimate time, in the home of a white person um, overnight. In fact, I think the very first time I was ever invited into a white person's home for dinner was at your house years and years and years and years and years ago. I mean, that might have been, I
It
don't
just
know,
blows my mind. But I've
20
been,
years ago.
yeah.
First time. I don't know if I've ever told you that, but I'm pretty sure that was the first time. And it has been, I know since then I've probably had maybe 4 or 5 other invitations. So it's not like I'm constantly up in white people's houses by invitation, right? And so that's one thing that I had to think about. Is like I've never been in the space of, and part of it is because growing up, my mother wouldn't permit that. She was very concerned about me being alone in a community, in a setting with white people that she may or may not have known well, and how they may feel about me, either overtly or subconsciously, impacting my self-esteem and my sense of self-worth and my confidence, and maybe even my safety. But just more, she just didn't want me as a kid to have to bat away messages, indirect or otherwise, that could contradict who she was grooming me to be in terms of my
Mm.
confidence levels and my sense of my own beauty and worth. So spending the night at my white friend's house was just not happening, not happening. And so fast forward, I'm 54 years old and still hadn't spent the night ever inside of a white person's house. And so I was able to fix that last year. And that was great. And it was just a wonderful experience. And I had a wonderful sister who's in Rare, a white sister who's in the Rare Women Collective community, invited me to her home in California. And I spent the weekend, and it was lovely, and just an incredible opportunity to disrupt narratives. And she and I spent a lot of time talking about, not just what we're going to do for the weekend and hanging out, but just what this was doing in terms of my fear reset and fear disruption. And so just really seeking out more connection points. I need more of the other side of this, is to help fuel and stave off the narrative that too easily comes to the front of my mind if I'm not careful.
And that is a lot of the work of the Rare Collective, really,
That is.
is creating this natural just taking those intersection points and really deepening those in
Mm-hmm.
meaningful ways
Mm-hmm.
for
And
people.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that was all I had to say. So yeah.
Okay.
I know you've got to go. I know you have another meeting backed up right against this, and you've got to go get on a plane. Thank you for joining us, Nikki. We could talk for another hour. This is so timely because of what is happening in our world. And this is an episode that needs this is a conversation that needs to happen. And we probably need to do a part 2 or a part 3 because there's so much to say. But if you are interested, listeners, go to harperslade.com, look at Nikki's stuff about the Rare Women Collective, especially if you are a white woman and you are feeling like you're ready to do the work and you're looking at what is happening and you have a fear response. I'm not going to lie. I have a fear response to what is happening in our world today and what it could mean, because, it's that poem, first it was the Jews, and then it was like it's like at some point it could be my family, it could be the people that I care about. The tides can turn so easily when we are operating from this place where we stop valuing the shared humanity. And
That's
we
right.
start looking for the differentiation.
Living is very harmful. And Rita, let me just say one other thing about Rare real quick before we wrap up. So Rare actually has its own website. So I would invite your listeners to go to www.rarewomancollective.com. Rare has 2 A's in it, RAARE. We have a new program that we're rolling out called Advocacy in Action. That's going to start in a couple of weeks. And that is, I think it's a 5, maybe 6-week coaching program specifically designed for white women to learn how to navigate the conversations around advocacy while preserving the dignity of the folks that you're speaking with, operating in grace, not leading with fear and anger, but also really thinking about your intended goal, your intended outcome, in the face of sometimes very difficult and highly emotional conversations. So that coaching program is specifically about the navigation of those conversations. And so it's going to be really, really exciting. We're excited to offer that. This is our newest offering under the Rare Woman Collective. So I'd invite your listeners to check that out too.
I love that. That's fabulous. And look, listeners, join us. Don't fall prey to this dehumanizing narrative that is getting driven outside of you. Don't let it get implanted in your brain. Keep naming it, recognizing it, and choosing to go find the receipts that proves the human of every person that you are engaging with. Next week is our final week of this season. I can't believe it, but the season is coming to an end, and we have 2 guests coming next week. So come back and join us on Tuesday after the holiday. It is, let me get the right place. Michelle Phillips is coming. This is going to be a great capstone about the story I'm telling myself. She's going to talk about how she has named the primary voices telling her stories inside of her head, and she's going to give you tips on how you can do that too. That's Tuesday at 3 p.m. And then on Thursday, Brad Luttrell is with me, and we're going to wrap up talking about communication and making sure that you are not just offering people vitamins, but you are offering them the real painkiller that they are looking for and how you communicate your message more effectively. To do that, that is Thursday, the 29th at 9:30 a.m. Those are our final 2 episodes of the first season of the Story I'm Telling Myself podcast. Thank you for being a listener. Ruth, thank you for joining us in the comments. We're so happy to have you with us. Nikki, you're amazing. I hope your travels are safe today. I hope the storms are holding off in the South and that you get home safely. And everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on The Story I'm Telling Myself. If you loved this episode, would you do us a big favor to help us reach a bigger audience? Simply subscribe to the Story I'm Telling Myself podcast and rate this episode and share it with a friend. Thank you for listening.